Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more.
Welcome to Compass Points, a podcast about Knoxville and Knox County government, politics, business, education, and just about anything else that grabs our attention. I am Scott Barker, the editor of Compass. We are a subscription-based website and newsletter, and we report on all these topics and more. You can find us at CompassKnox.com. I'm joined today again by my partner with Compass, Jesse Fox-Mayshark. Jesse, how are you doing today?
Hey, Scott. I'm okay. I don't know if you're susceptible to this, but we are at the height of ragweed season here this week, and it has taken a little toll on my sinuses, so I apologize for any phlegminess that might come across.
Well, I sympathize with you. I have a low-level allergic reaction to something year-round, so it's not ever really acute, but I sneeze and sniffle more often than I did when I was younger. I will say that. So, I hope
it's a very East Tennessee thing.
Yeah, very much so. So, I'm right here with you. Also in the studio is Seth Barber, Lord Seth Barber, the king of Barbarian Productions, who is sitting amid his gold and marble and tapestries and all that good stuff. Seth, how you doing today? What's the 3-day-old weather forecast?
Well, I'm gonna expand it to the 4-day-old and hope that everybody got through the madness that was Thursday this week. I was out in public when it was going down and the hail and the whole thing. One of my shops was out of power for a couple hours. So looking out, hoping that everybody survived that well. Other than that, it's a dim day today, but it's cooling off, and I like it. I'm happy with the temperature starting to settle into the sub 80s and 90s as the norm, and that's always good for me.
Absolutely. Always look forward to this time of year, and we now are going to turn our attention to all the things, not all the things, because we can't get to everything on the podcast, but many of the things that happened last week in Knoxville and Knox County. There is now a formal opposition group to the proposed sales tax increase that is going to be on the November ballot in the city election. The mayor has backed another group that is in favor of it. So we have two separate groups whose reason for existence is to advocate for or against the sales tax. We'll talk about that. County Commission met last week and had their reorganization meeting, so they're all reorganized and sort of. We'll talk about that. The Emerald Youth Foundation Chilhowee Park land purchase that we talked about the last couple of weeks was postponed again, and we'll talk a little bit about that and what's coming up in the future and how people can get involved in that process. But we'll start out with the Tennessee Valley Fair. It began on Friday, and we had we took an in-depth look at the fair, primarily because it seems like it's in flux now, and its future is I don't know if I would say in doubt, but certainly it is a little uncertain now, as it's. I mean, it's been around since 1916, so it's 109 years old. Before that, there were expositions in Chilhowee Park, where the fair is held every September, and it's been around a long time, but they're kind of, the fair management and the city of Knoxville have gotten kind of crossways, and not necessarily in a bitter way, but certainly they're talking past one another, and the city is wanting to use Chilhowee, create a Chilhowee Park that's used year round by area residents. In doing so, they have, of course, and we'll talk more about the sale with Emerald Youth Foundation, proposed sale in a bit. But part of that was selling the former Midway portion of Chilhowee Park, which is on the south side of Magnolia Avenue, away from the main part of the park, which is where the fair does their setup. Their carnies stay there in RVs, and there's parking there. So the city is going to be, if they sell this to Chilhowee Park, next year will be the last year that this year will be the last year they'd be able to use that. Also, as we reported last month, the Muse Knoxville is going to be moving into the Jacob Building, which is the kind of the primary air-conditioned indoor exhibit hall for the fair, and they're going to be moving in after next year, after the 2026 fair, and that will take away 57,000 square feet or so of space that the fair has used for years and years. The fair feels squeezed. The city feels like they're doing following what came out of a 2019 plan for Chilhowee Park, long-term plan for Chilhowee Park, I've been reporting on this pretty heavily. Jesse, you've been observing this very closely, and understand you're getting ready to go to the fair. So, what are your observations about what's going on?
Yeah, I'm planning to go to the fair this weekend. Got some family in town. Going to take my nieces down there to experience a little bit of Tennessee Valley Fair culture. One thing that struck me, and Scott, for those of you who haven't read it, Scott wrote a very good article Friday for Compass looking at this whole issue. And in that article, you had Scott Skumsky from the fair, David Brace from the city. You talked to both of them separately, and they both said to you, well, we're not really, Scott Skumsky has kind of been, and he's been saying this in public meetings too recently, that, we at the fair are not really being included by the city in these conversations. And then Brace, on the other hand, is saying, well, we're not really hearing anything from the fair. And I think when you see that kind of thing, I mean, they're both talking to you. So obviously they are capable of talking about this. And so if they are not having those conversations, there's a reason they're not having them. And I think that there's actually reasons on both sides of that. I think that the fair for a long time, because let's face it, there has been discussion now for many years about the long-term viability of keeping the fair there, about other possible uses for the park and the Jacob Building. So it's not like the fair or anybody else has been totally in the dark that, there's discussion about this. I think the fair's position has kind of just been to dig in as much as they can and kind of say, we would really just prefer that things not change. That would clearly be their preference, is just we kind of like the way things are. This is the way it's always been. Let's keep it this way. And on the city side, there's been this kind of long-term push that's been gaining some momentum toward, well, we do think things should change. And those are fundamentally oppositional interests. And so I think to the degree that they are not talking to each other, it's because they both kind of recognize that, and neither one of them has quite wanted to really come to terms with, well, what does this mean? And I think maybe there's a hope on the part of the fair that if we just kind of, rely on inertia and the fact that we're already here to carry us, that's our best bet. That doesn't, especially with the Muse moving into the Jacob Building, something's going to have to change if the fair does stay there. But also, I think the thing that you're hearing from the public in all of this discussion about Chilhowee Park and people who live in the community and people who are expressing interest in the future of both the park and the fair, the public does value Chilhowee Park. And if you look at that 2019 study, there were a lot of ideas about how it could be made more of a park, more accessible year-round to people who live there. But the public also values the fair. People like the fair. And as you say, the fair's been there for over 100 years. And also that kind of use of Chilhowee Park, you talked about the expositions in the early 1900s, is really foundational to it. So this isn't, I know the city says, well, the fair only uses it 10 days a year, which is true. And there's definitely logic to the idea that you shouldn't have that whole area dictated by that. On the other hand, it really is a central part of the identity of Chilhowee Park to have fairs, to have expos and that kind of thing. And I don't know at the moment that we're hearing a lot of value from the city toward kind of preserving that.
Yeah, there's a reason that the city manages Chilhowee Park as a gathering place, not necessarily as a park. It's not part of the Parks and Recreation Department. It is a city facility like the Civic Coliseum is, but the fair is central to or I don't know if it's fair central to Knoxville's identity, but it has a very is very much a part of the city's identity. And I think that I talked to one person I talked to for this story is Jack Neely, the executive director of the Knoxville History Project, and who spoke to that significance to Knoxville, and it was it is part of the identity, and especially with Chilhowee Park, it is almost, in fact, for decades it was synonymous with Chilhowee Park. It's
the main reason that most people who know Chilhowee Park know Chilhowee Park,
right?
Because they grew up going to the fair, or they've taken their kids to it, or whatever.
Yeah, in the early years of the fair actually owned Chilhowee Park, or a board member of the fair owned Chilhowee Park. It was sold to the city in I think 1930, and it was but then the city got the fair to manage the park completely and totally, and the city didn't really take management of the park back over until after World War II, 1945. So it's very much part of the park, and quite frankly, while it is while other groups can use Chilhowee Park and do use Chilhowee Park, there are all kinds of shows that go on in the Jacob Building and some in the parking lot out there, the Midway, and but the fair is they occupy it for 23 days out of the year. The 10 days the fair is going on, and the 13 days before and after the event, where they're setting up or tearing down, and then by far the largest or the longest tenure of any group that uses Chilhowee Park. It does bring about 140,000 people every year to Chilhowee Park. It is which is other than now, obviously over the course of the year, you've got Zoo Knoxville, you've got Muse, the Muse that bring in a substantial number of people too over the year, but this is 140,000 people over a 10-day period, so that's it's really concentrated, and there is some a decent economic impact there. It's not overwhelming, but it is decent. They have an economic impact statement from 2018 that is that they use, where they talk about the overall economic impact being 8.4 or $11.4 million, which is true according to the report, which I read for this, and but there's a caveat there. Most of the people by far come from Knoxville and Knox County, The consultant who did the report said, hey, they would have spent that money elsewhere. They would have gone to restaurants, movies, and whatever else. So that, they didn't say it didn't count because, the money does change hands, but the real economic impact comes from visitors. The visitors, when you parse them out, it's about $6.9 million in both direct and indirect economic impact on the city. Part of that's because even the out-of-towners don't stay in hotels. I mean, they come to Knoxville and they come. You can almost look at numbers, and as much as numbers can tell you this, as these people are here out of nostalgia. They're coming back to go to stay with family or maybe friends, staying in their houses rather than staying in hotels just to go to the fair.
Right. So it's not that kind of out-of-town draw as opposed to UT home games, which really do bring tens of thousands of people from outside Knoxville and Knox County who are bringing money from elsewhere and spending it. And what the fair generates from external visitors is just a drop in the bucket compared to UT football games. Oh, yeah.
A report from UT around the same time, I believe it was 2016. A typical UT home game brings in from out-of-town visitors almost $42 million over a weekend, and so that's significantly heavier. But then UT dwarfs everybody. I remember back, and you may too, when I believe it was when they were talking about the building the planetarium.
Universe
Knoxville. Yes, we're going down memory lane. But I remember somebody saying, I believe they talked to the people in Chattanooga about the aquarium down there, and they said, "Hey, we'll trade you 10 aquariums for UT football."
Right.
Because you've already got the tourism market up there because that's what football is. So anyway, one thing that's kind of there is, you're right. I mean, the Muse arrangement going into the Jacob building kind of underscores that the footprint of the fair is shrinking. And while most of us think of the fair as being the carnival, the big part of it, I mean, from them, and when you talk to Sukomsky, he talks about the agricultural and educational aspects of the fair a lot. He comes from a farm family, and and that's central to the fair's mission. You need space for cattle and goats and all those things, and that available space is shrinking, and with they're going to have to do something to find out to replace or to house the things that went on that have been going on in the Jacobs building. There's vendors who are in there, commercial vendors. There are all kinds of displays, a robotics competition, all kinds of things that they do in there. A lot of them aren't suited for being outside, even if it's under a tent. Sukomsky mentioned to me, and it wasn't in the article. It was long enough as it was. I wasn't able to work everything in, but every little detail in. But they tried the photo exhibit outside one year, and it was so hot that the photos were like separating from the matting that they were in and things like that. So it was not very conducive to that, and so they're not going to have an air conditioned space. When one of the things is, and we can talk about this just a little bit too, is because this goes to what the city's intentions are. But that report from 2019, one of the recommendations was the Muse moving into the the Jacob building, which actually wasn't necessarily a recommendation, but it was noted as a possibility. But one of the others is a new exhibit hall, that the city would build somewhere in Chilhowee Park, that would be a more modern version. I mean, the Jacob Building was built in 1941, so it's long in the tooth. But there are no plans to do that. Those things, as you well know, take years to figure out, plan for, and it's not all
well. And also, if you think about the future of Chilhowee Park, like Chilhowee Park is not an endless expanse of space, and so even having a place to do something like that, it's not obvious where they would do it, and it would take away some amount of space that could be used for other things there.
Yeah, but to me, looking at this is the fair is really good for Knoxville. I think that almost everyone agrees with that. The city administration says that. They say they want to keep the fair. They do a lot. I mean, for all of the statements, some of it from Sukumski, some of it from people in the general public, that the cities want to get rid of the fair. They don't like the fair being there and all that. The city subsidizes the fair to the tune of about $200,000 a year. It's not. That includes the rent. They get free rent at the park. When the old Midway portion, if it gets sold to Emerald Youth Foundation, the city is going to make the former, or not former, it's the current Knoxville Fire Department training facility, which is just on the other side of the interstate from Chilhowee Park. They're going to make it available for the setup and tear down in the Carney living and things like that, and they're going to close a portion of Prosser Road, make it available for parking, those kinds of things. I mean, there are indications when you look past what people say and what are they doing. There are indications from the city that yes, they still want the fair there. There are also indications that they're not going to. Mayor Kincannon said this at the city council meeting. We don't want the tail to wag the dog, because to the city, Chilhowee Park is the thing that is most important, and the fair is one interest, a big one, but only one interest in one stakeholder in what's going on at the fair. Another thing you can look at too, I mean, for all of the discussion of the Sukumski does talk about how he's being left out. Although the one thing about saying I'm left out of all these plans is the city has a plan that's been in place since 2019. It's not been implemented very quickly. These kinds of plans usually aren't. I mean, the South Knox Waterfront Plan was passed in 2006, and they're still waiting for that pedestrian bridge that's part of that plan. So, I mean, these things are long-term deals, and but the city lays out in there, pretty straightforwardly or their consultants did, what they intend to do. One of the things that's in there that kind of gives credence to what Sukumski says, and is a little bit, could be considered a little bit contradictory to what the administration's been saying, is that one of the big recommendations in there is to find an alternative site for the fair.
Right. And city officials do say that too. Like, well, we'd like to keep it here, but hey, if they find something somewhere else, we'd be very supportive of that too. And so, I think you can fairly say that the city may, on balance, prefer to keep the fair in some iteration there. It would be hard to say that they seem to be prioritizing it.
No, no, they're not prioritizing it. As I said, Mayor Kincannon says that's the tail wagging the dog, and she's not prioritizing the fair above other stakeholders. But the recommendation in the report was, the city should help them find a suitable location. Of course, it needs to be 100 acres. Find 100 acres in the city that's suitable for agriculture and
that somebody hasn't snapped up for housing or something.
Yeah. Good luck to you on that. So one thing that the fair has done is they've started looking for property outside the city for a fairgrounds. Now, it's really the University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture that's looking. They are looking for a place for a state-of-the-art agricultural education facility where they can do shows and they can do all kinds of things through the Institute of Agriculture. But it could also serve as the home for the Tennessee Valley Fair during those 10 days in September when they put on the fair. It would be a completely dedicated facility to agriculture, which is near and dear to Sukumski's heart. He talked about one of the things they can't do at Chilhowee Park is have year-round cattle shows, for example. That would be a possibility at a UTIA facility. And it just so happens that the vice chancellor of UTIA is on the board of directors of the fair. So I mean, it's they're looking. They haven't found one yet that we know of.
That's the thing. The idea sounds potentially appealing to those parties, but you got to have the land. And yes, there's a lot of undeveloped land still in Knox County, including in East Knox County, which would be not that far from where the fair is now. But that is also getting snapped up for housing left, right, and center. So you got to come up with that property, and then somebody's got to pay for all this. Like, as you say, the fair right now is being subsidized by the city. They don't even pay rent. Where's that money going to come from?
Yeah, the fair's is in last year, 2024, they finished about $500,000 in the black, which, contrary to what a lot of people believe, nonprofits do need to finish the year in the black. That's part of it. They are not sustainable if they lose money. So, nonprofit doesn't mean go broke. But they don't have a lot of resources. That's why they're piggybacking on the Institute of Agriculture, which has enormous resources. And they, this would be, the way that it's been described to me would be a UTIA facility, or it would be through UTIA, even if they got a private, UT's big on public-private partnerships now, so even if it was a public-private partnership with ConAgra or some other big ag conglomerate, it would still be a UTIA facility, and the fair would kind of piggyback on that, because the fair can't go out and buy land to use year round, to own and operate a 10-day fair. That's just not as, even though they would be able to do things year round, it just wouldn't be feasible, because the fair would still be the big draw. I mean, they make their revenues on the fair about $3 million a year, and so that would still be the biggest part of it, because you ain't going to make $3 million a year on your on a handful of cattle shows and other agricultural shows. They just won't do it, because I mean a lot of one of the big revenue streams is, as much as you want to talk about ag, one of the big revenue streams for the fair is rides on the Midway. So
rides and fried foods.
On a stick. Don't forget, it's got to be on a stick.
Right.
There's a reason they pay this carnival company $800,000 to come in and run a carnival, because they make more money than they make a lot of that back and more from rides, from concessions, from just ticket sales to get in. So anyway, the the fair, as we said, is underway, goes through this weekend, and we are certain that those who love going to the fair will go, and those who don't, I probably I don't know if I'm going to go this year or not. I haven't gone in a few years. I can't hear the fireworks from my house. So
one of many places you can hear fireworks from in North Knoxville.
North Knoxville is you can hear fireworks
just from the fair. We hear them from the baseball stadium. We hear them from Neyland Stadium. We hear them from World's Fair Park.
We hear them from our neighbors,
and we hear them from our neighbors. That's right.
The old traditional August 13th fireworks display. That's that happens a lot. Anyway, the future of the fair, as I said, does appear to be in doubt, or at least uncertain, and the city and the fair will have to see if they can ever get on the same page moving forward. They will have to come up with some sort of longer-term agreement at some point if they're going to stay in Chilhowee Park. They have a contract through the end of 2026, and it can be renewed up through 2029, and probably will be in one form or another. Though one thing that is abundantly clear is that there will be changes to both Chilhowee Park and how the fair how their relationship goes with the city. That kind of takes us. We're staying there in East Knoxville, and we mentioned earlier the Chilhowee Park sale of nearly 13 acres to Emerald Youth Foundation, which has had a bumpy ride since it was introduced a couple of weeks ago. There's been a lot of community opposition to that. Emerald Youth Foundation wants to invest $20 to $30 million to build a sports and activities and community center complex there, very similar to one that they already operate in Lonsdale. Last week at City Council, they were supposed to consider this. It had been on the agenda originally 2 weeks prior to that. It was postponed for 2 weeks because of people's concerns. There was a public meeting in between, kind of a town hall. Then last week, City Council met and decided to postpone it again for 4 weeks this time. So it'll be the end of September when this is heard again. But it's kind of interesting. Most council members appear to be ready to postpone. They are glad to postpone. I think that if it had been forced to go up to a vote, it probably would not have passed, because there are significant concerns about hearing from the public by a lot of the council members. Councilwoman Amelia Parker and Councilwoman Sima Singh. Primarily Parker wants to just put the brakes on it. She wanted us to stop it.
Right. Parker and Singh voted against the postponement because they wanted to just take it off the agenda altogether.
And basically withdraw it from consideration now and in its current form in the future. The Parker wants there to be a broader discussion about the future of Chilhowee Park, public participation, that sort of thing. The exact kind of thing that went on in 2018 leading to the 2019 report, because there was a lot of public input there. There might be a lot of people who said that they didn't realize that was going on or whatever, but it did happen. It was publicized. I remember it. I'm sure you do, because it began under the Rohero administration when you were still working with the city, Jesse, and and there were focus groups, there were meetings with community people, there were There was a survey that had 2,000 responses, which is, pretty decent to go by. That about preferences that was all fed into this report that the city goes on as far as their development of Chilhowee Park. So I'm not sure anybody with the city wants to quite go that far, but they do want to have more public input, and it's kind of in a way a little late because they unveiled this as going to be just a regular item on the agenda, and a lot of people are upset about it. And I don't know that the opposition's pretty entrenched at the moment. I don't know how I know they're loud. I don't know how big it is. I don't know if people in other parts of town particularly care about what happens to the old Midway property. It is a fenced-in lot that is used primarily for the staging of the fair and some parking.
And I do think it's worth saying there, because this is something that the opponents to this bristle when the city talks about that, like, well, nobody's using it right now. And the answer to that is, well, yeah, nobody's using it because the city's got a fence around it.
They do have a fence around it.
And it's locked. Like, if the city wanted this to be used space, they could have planned and built. I don't know what the people who are opposed to the sale envision, but say, some sort of like park space with playgrounds and various other kind of amenities. Like, the city could have done that, and then it would be used. And so it's the idea of it being underutilized is kind of self-serving from the city, because
right.
Well, you are literally the ones who are underutilizing it. It's not like the community is underutilizing it.
You're absolutely right. There is a fence around it. You can't just go onto that property. On the other hand, there hasn't been a big groundswell to do that.
Yeah,
I mean
nobody's been
on the other hand. I mean, from the city's standpoint, hey, nobody wanted to do. Nobody's come to us and said, hey, why don't you take down the fence and make that a park? A more park-like,
right? Including members of city council right now who are raising objections to this, as I recall, did not talk about this in their last campaign. Somebody could have championed and said, I want to make Chilhowee Park a priority, and I want this and this and this. And had somebody run on that platform and won, they could claim a mandate to really push for that. But I don't recall that being much of a topic of conversation.
Well, the only candidate, the only city council member who has been pushing for more development. This is at the fringe of the Burlington area. Not fringe. It's part of the Burlington area. Everything on the other side of Magnolia from the fair is, or from Chilhowee, the main part of Chilhowee Park is part of Burlington. So this is Burlington. The only council member who has talked about championing Burlington is, of course, the 6th District representative who represents Burlington, and that is Gwen McKenzie. Gwen McKenzie has been very supportive of this project. The Burlington Residents and Business Association is enthusiastically behind the project. And the only other elected official who's made this a priority is Mayor Kincannon. I mean, you've got the city council member who has represented that area and the mayor both supportive of this. So nobody else has made it an issue until now, and you don't know how this is going to go. It's not looking very, very good for it right now, to be honest. And
I think that the challenge that they have now is they're sort of locked into, and I think this came out in the public meeting last week, and I imagine we'll see some iteration of it in the one that's now been set for next week, where the city, as far as I can tell, the administration is still, and McKenzie are still kind of taking the approach of, okay, let's slow down and explain the Emerald Youth Project to people so they can get more comfortable with it. But that's kind of still their orientation, is like, let's figure out how to get this Emerald Youth Project through. I think that's where they're coming from. the opposition that has gathered in the meantime, I think, is not particularly, like, I think at this point, most people do understand what the Emerald Youth Project is. Like, people have gone to these meetings, have sat through a lot of discussion of this. Yeah. I think people broadly understand it. It's that there's a lot of people who think, well, that's not the best use of that space, and we can imagine better uses for our community. And so if that dynamic, no matter how many public meetings they have, if that dynamic just kind of stays where it is, then you're going to have city council members forced into this thing where there's going to be a bunch of people in the community who are just super mad if they go ahead and get, after weeks of, discussion and opposition, if they go ahead and do it anyway. That's not saying that there won't be 5 votes on council to do it. There certainly could be. But I think this is putting city council in a pretty difficult situation.
Yeah, and you were talking about the administration and McKinsey saying, well, we just need to put more information out. They actually created a web page on the city's website that has more information on it about Chilhowee Park and the Emerald Youth Foundation's proposal and all than any project I can ever recall. I mean, they basically say, look on there and say, the gravel in this portion of the parking lot was actually quarried in East Knox County and Mascot. I mean, that's almost as detailed as it gets. And so if you want information for that, you can go there. It's KnoxvilleTN.gov Chilhowee Park proposal. It's got all kinds. If you just want the information about this is what the project is, what's this all about, in addition to reading Compass, which we've been reporting on this. Actually, we've been reporting on this for longer than a year. But that's a good place to go. I mean, they've got links to the documents and all that. So if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, that's something you can do. But I think you're right. Most people have a general understanding of what's going on. There are a lot of nuances that you don't get. I mean, one of the things is there. People say, well, that property is worth more than the 900. It's a little bit less than $1 million. It's worth more than $900,000. It's 13 acres. It's right on Magnolia Avenue. And yes, that's true. But as we talked about, there's also a stormwater drain on the property that would have to be moved for any kind of real development. And another thing that we really haven't talked about a whole lot, or haven't talked about, is this land is zoned open space, and that severely limits what you can do with the property, which lowers its value. And
right, you'd have to get it rezoned, and that would be a major
and having a planning staffer told the appraisal company, the company that did the appraisal, basically there's no way that's going to get rezoned, because it's almost impossible to rezone open space land. You've got the plans are in place. There's a reason that stuff is zoned for open space.
Well, and the public tends to be pretty protective.
The public is protective, and now there are things that can be built on open space. The Emerald Youth Foundation proposal is one of them, but for the most part, you can't get it rezoned, and if it's not rezoned, it's not going to be worth nearly as much as it would be if you were able to build a mixed use complex there, or residential, or all commercial, whatever it is. It would be worth more. But you can't do that without rezoning, and the rezoning is almost, I won't say it's impossible, but it's really, really, really difficult.
If you think this project's hard to get through, something that was just like, we're just going to sell this to some developer to come in and build, apartments or whatever, that would be much harder to get through. I do think that when people talk about that, though, I mean, yes, they're saying this is worth more than the money they're paying, but some of that also, I think, reflects a sense that there is a value there that is maybe hard to put a number on, but this is 13 acres of open space in the middle of heavily developed city neighborhoods, and that would be a hard thing to create if
Yes.
it didn't already exist.
Yes.
And so I think part of what people are expressing is just like, there's not another lot like this that we can think about the best use for our community. And so if it's put to this use, which is always true, any use you designate sort of forecloses all other things you can do with it. And I think that's a lot of the talk about the value, I think, kind of comes down to that. It's this like, well, however much money it's worth, this is an inherently valuable piece of property to the community.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there is certainly that, and there's a difference between value and worth, and it is not, in its current zoning, it's not worth more than $1 million, but the value to a lot of people in Knoxville is much higher, and as you hate to pull the cliche from the commercial, but it's priceless, to a lot of people. And so anyway, this is not going to be considered by City Council again until the end of September. In the meantime, if you want to find out more, Emerald Youth Foundation is holding an open house at its facility in Lonsdale that is being used as the model for what they want to do in Burlington at Chilhowee Park. You can go there. They'll give guided tours. They'll answer questions, and you can see for yourself what it would be. The Burlington facility would be larger, but you'll be able to see for yourself what they have in mind, what their vision is for this property in East Knoxville. And I think that would be instructive no matter what side of the issue you are on. That's going to be from 5:30 to 7 p.m. on Tuesday next week. Then you've got the city's going to have another meeting. We'll talk. It was going to be on Monday. They postponed it to the following Monday. I believe that's the 13th, and the 15th, and that's going to be at the EV Davidson Community Center, 6 to 7:30 p.m.
Which is another city facility that was provided to Emerald Youth for their programming.
Yeah, Emerald Youth does do the programming there. Of course, they could do this anywhere. So if they didn't, they're doing it there. So over the next couple of weeks, there will be these opportunities to learn more about the project, to have discussions, to talk to people, to be able, probably there will be, at least at the city meeting, and I would imagine at the Emerald Youth open house would be, there will be council members there that you can talk to. You can talk to staffers. It's going to be big. And one of the things the city's meeting on the 15th is also going to talk about the larger issue of Chilhowee Park. They're going to have, right now the Parks Department is going through a visioning process that if you care about Knoxville's parks and you haven't participated in that, don't complain when they make changes to a park near you in the next couple of years, because that's what they're doing now. They're coming up with a strategic plan for the parks system. That's kind of one of those things where, a lot of people ignore these opportunities, like the Chilhowee Park plan, like the current parks public input on their strategic plan. They ignore them until something happens that generated from the plan, and the city is always going to say, or whatever government is always going to say, we had a plan, you had a chance to weigh in, So anyway, they'll be there as well. So it will be an interesting one. The last public meeting that they had that was held at the Beck Center was pretty rowdy. The opponents were very, very vocal and very.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow the discussion online in various local Facebook groups and other places, my perception of it is only amping up more and more, kind of the longer this goes on, and so I think that it's gonna be a hot one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this will be, the weather's cooling off, but it sure isn't when it comes to Chilhowee Park. I tell you that. The one other thing that happened to switch to county government for a change. Knox County Commission held its reorganization meeting on last Tuesday. There weren't really any surprises, or very many surprises there. So there wasn't really that much of a reorganization. The current chair, Gina Oster, was unanimously approved to have another year as with the gavel. So she's going to continue as the chair of county commission. Kim Frazier is going to continue as the vice chair, although she did have a challenge from that was Angela Russell who challenged her. Although Russell ended up voting, kind of abstaining from the vote on that one. But anyway, the only they named the chairs of various committees. There was one kind of interesting development, and it was on the Rules Committee. And when you say Rules Committee, people's eyes kind of glaze over, but there's a lot. The Rules Committee in County Commission does, they, as the name implies, set the rules. And the rules can give people advantages or disadvantages depending on how they...
Right. These are the rules for how County Commission conducts its business, essentially.
Right. And they also used a voting method that they hadn't used before. Now, most of the committees, vast majority of them that they named, there were, say, 5 open spots. 5 commissioners said they wanted to serve, so they said, okay, that's it. The Rules Committee, there were 8 commissioners who wanted to serve 5 spaces. So they go to this method, which is a paper ballot, and each commissioner wrote down the 5 commissioners they wanted to see on this the Rules Committee, and they would go. They add up the votes, and whoever got the most votes overall, the 5 candidates with the most votes overall were the ones who were selected. Well, that was all well and good for Courtney Durrett, Terry Hill, Kim Frazier, and Adam Thompson. They were the top 4 vote getters, and so they were kind of cleared. The 5th spot, however, wound up being a tie between Damon Rawls and Andy Fox. And Fox had already said at the meeting, I really, really, really want to be on the Rules Committee. In fact,
of course he does.
He was on another committee. Yeah, he was on had willing to serve on another committee, and he said, no, take my name out of consideration there because I really, really, really want to be on the Rules Committee.
And just for context, Rawls is one of the 3 Democrats on commission. Fox is one of the Republicans and is one of the most sort of hard-line conservative Republicans, and in his first year on commission has been very active in pursuing all sorts of things related to his sort of political agendas, and one can only imagine that he has some pretty strong ideas about things he would like to pursue on the Rules Committee.
Yes, some of the things that he has tried to do, in a parliamentary manner, have run afoul of the laws, and they'll have the law director say, "Well, you really can't do it that way. You have to do it this way," and and that sort of thing. So you can understand why he would want to, and you could also understand why some commissioners might look askance at that. And quite frankly, there was in the votes for this, it was pretty nonpartisan, or bipartisan, however you want to put it. Anyway, so they had you had this tie between Rawls and Fox. And then they just did a voice vote. And again, here we go on the nonpartisan nature of this. It ended in a tie as well, with some Republicans joining Democrats and voting against Fox, and one Democrat, Shane Jackson, voting for Fox instead of Rawls, his fellow Democrat. The reason that it was a tie was Kim Frazier decided not to vote. She abstained, and she didn't change her vote when given the opportunity, so it was a tie. So they had to do it again. Second time around, Frazier decides to vote, and she votes for Fox. So you think, okay, Fox is going to win. Not so fast as our friend Lee Corso, whose last Sports Center was last week. Not so fast, my friend. Jackson flipped his vote to Rawls, which gave Rawls the win. So Rawls was named to the committee. It was one of those kind of fun inside baseball things you get to watch and enjoy as a journalist or as someone who goes to these meetings. But Rawls will be and Durrett will be the two Democrats on the Rules Committee. It's still going to be having Republican majority for as much as that is going to matter. But
and I think that it illustrates again, we've talked about this before, but the power dynamics on this particular county commission are you've got three Democrats who more or less, although as you note, not always, but they're kind of a clique or a faction, you could say, an interest group. You have three kind of very hardline conservatives, which is Fox, Angela Russell, and Rhonda Lee, who are kind of on the far right of commission. And then you have the other five Republican members who are kind of, moderate or establishment Republicans in the middle. And so you get these interesting combinations depending on the issue. Sometimes those other Republicans do support the things that Fox and Russell and Lee are pushing for. But especially when it comes to some of Fox's more aggressive moves, there's often a lot of skepticism from the more moderate Republicans who then will vote more with the Democrats on some issues. Yeah,
it is an interesting dynamic because of those factions, and those are pretty, they're loose but useful. That's a useful tool to use to look at this commission. None of them alone can get anything passed.
Right.
The faction of moderate or establishment Republicans that you mentioned has 5 members. You need 6. So there has to be a little bit of give and take to get anything done that you really want done. You can always propose something just to make a point, and commissioners certainly have done that. Fox, for example, does that quite frequently, and we'll say that. Say, I just wanted to get it out there, But if there's something that you seriously need to have passed, you have to have support from someone who is not, at least one, and usually more than that, someone who is not in your faction of county commission. Another thing that happened last week, the week before, we had reported that Mayor India Kincannon had supported the formation of a political committee, single issue committee called Neighbors for Knoxville, that would advocate for the passage of the referendum question on the city ballot that would increase the local option sales tax by half a cent. They had a big they had not big, but they did have a press briefing and an announcement in West Knoxville 2 weeks ago. This week, this is a group that had already formed, but R. Bentley Marlowe, who is a developer, is a former city council candidate. He is an envelope-pushing developer and redeveloper of housing, infill housing in Mechanicsville and other lower-income areas. He has formed a similar committee called Knoxville Against Raising Taxes, which, as the name implies, is opposed to the passage of the referendum, and they have just kind of gotten underway with what they're doing. I talked to Marlowe. He is basically trying to tap into the same people who defeated the referendum last year that would have made city council district races citywide. He's looking at the same coalition of Republicans and the far left-wing activists like people in the city council movement, and also he's kind of those two strange bedfellows did come together in the
and on this issue they have a real obvious overlap in the sense that Republicans, conservatives tend to just be against raising taxes in general, and people on the left who are philosophically much more open to certain kinds of taxation really don't like sales taxes because it is one of the most regressive taxes that there is. It ends up affecting people with less money a lot more than it affects people with more money.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, they're on the surface strange bedfellows, but on this particular issue, they kind of come together, and Marlowe talked about the regressive nature of the tax. Or most of the people who either buy or rent, the houses that he works on are on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. So he's pretty much in tune with what's going on with folks in that demographic. He also talked about the spending priorities that the Kincannon administration has talked about. If this passes, it's going to raise about $47 million a year in new income, new revenue, and the administration said, okay, they're going to spend the money on affordable housing and on things like parks, greenways, sidewalks, paving, some infrastructure things, and other infrastructure needs as well. And Marlowe basically said, hey, the city's been awash in COVID money since the pandemic, and it's gone away, and they're just kind of addicted to it, and this is a way for them to continue spending money on various things, even in the face of losing this federal funding. So that's one of his attacks on this. He also, as someone who builds housing for the lower end of the market, thinks that the cities, they're disingenuous about their commitment to affordable housing, even though this proposal would actually more than double what the city puts toward that. He said that, if you get out of my way, developers like me, you get out of our way, you take away some of these regulations, and we can build housing more cheaply than the city gets through its affordable housing programs, and we can get this done. And it's one of the, so he's kind of, hitting both the reason for, the effect of the tax on people who have to pay it, also on the priorities of spending that the city has. And so they're out there. They've got a website, and they've got social media. They've got yard signs they're putting out now. They've got people who are going door to door, knocking on doors, just like a regular campaign. And so we'll see how this goes. We've talked about this before. This is the city elections are low turnout elections, and how and with the change in the voting structure in the general election, people are only going to have one council race to vote on. They're not going to have 5 the way they did just 4 years ago when these seats were up on the ballot. And so we don't know how that's going to affect turnout. We also don't know how this referendum is going to affect turnout. There may be people who will go out just to vote against it, or less likely for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, anybody who's primarily motivated by the tax increase are probably going to be people against it.
And one interesting number that we will look at in November. We have to wait till the votes are in, but turnout in the 5th district, because in the 5th district, which is North Knoxville, basically west of Broadway, over to the Clinton Highway area, it is their district race isn't on the ballot, so you have no other reason to vote in the November election if you live in the 5th district other than the sales tax. So that'll be an interesting number to look at. I don't know if you could directly apply it to the other districts, but it could give you a flavor of if the if 5% of the 5th district voters turn out to vote for or against the sales tax, then you might say, but the other districts may be similar number. So you get an idea of how much that's going to drive the.
Well, and I'm sure there will be lots of
turnout.
Time to talk about the sales tax between now and November. But one thing that I think is interesting is I am not aware of any time a sales tax increase was proposed in Knoxville that it failed. And we haven't had a vote on this in 30-ish years, but right. I believe every time it has been proposed to raise the local option rate, it has passed. And so if this failed, it would be significant.
Yeah, I am not sure. I'm wanting to say that Victor Ash told me that the one before the one he got passed in 1988, the one that was previous to that failed.
There may have been one in the 80s.
But I've slept since then.
Yeah.
So I may be misremembering the it's always tricky, because you're asking people to tax themselves, and people inside the city of Knoxville, however, have traditionally accepted the need to tax themselves. So we'll although this one feels a little different. The one thing that Marlowe mentioned, that others have mentioned as well, is the way that the city timed this, and they were a little constrained too, because they had to give the county time to join if they wanted to join, so they had to bring this out and get it to council before 40 days earlier than they really otherwise would have needed to do. But it came out in the middle of discussions about this year's budget. And when they announced this year's budget, when Cannon did her State of the City address at Covenant Health Park, she said, we're in good shape, which when you look at the numbers, the city is in good shape. We don't need to raise property taxes, and in fact, we're in such good shape that we can make a $25 million lump sum payment on the convention center debt. And then, like a week later, she's saying, well, we're going to raise, we're going to propose raising the sales tax. So a lot of people, that was a big disconnect. And of course, they've tried to explain that this is for projects that are on the long-term list that we would get to eventually without the sales tax increase, but we can do them a lot faster. We're growing a lot faster, our population-wise, and that is certainly true. Knoxville's growing a lot faster than it was in the 2000s and in the early 2010s. So but to people, they were sitting there going, wait, you just told us that we didn't need to raise the property tax, but now you want us to raise the sales tax. You did tell us that we were flush with cash, and now you're telling us we need cash. So there was a messaging issue there that the proponents of these sales tax increase will need to overcome.
Yep.
And anyway, so that's those are the highlights from last week that we covered in Compass. If you wanted to read about those and then know about things going forward that are in a similar vein, you can go to CompassKnox.com, subscribe, and we'll see what we can do about taking care of you. Now, this week, rather, there are meetings. Again, we told you the Emerald Youth Foundation is having their open house at the Haslam Sansom Ministry Center in Lonsdale. We mentioned that's going to be Tuesday, and we nothing more to say about that. School board is meeting this week. They have 2 meetings, or technically 3, Monday and Thursday. On Monday at 4:30 in the Summer Place Ballroom,
boardroom.
Boardroom.
It's sadly not a ballroom.
I'm sorry, boardroom.
Those meetings would be more fun if it was in a ballroom.
It sure would be.
I don't know if you've been up to the one in the Civic. That's not a very
I have been up to the Civic Auditorium ballroom. Yes. It needs some work.
But anyway, wherever this is going to be, whether they're going to have dancing or not, they're having the reorganization at 4:30, like the county commission did last week. They will name a chair and do their committee things, and one of the interesting things will be, what's Betsy Henderson going to do?
Yep.
She is running for county mayor. She took a lot of criticism last year for appearing to give the impression that the Knox County School Board supported school vouchers when it did not, she it's kind of an interesting time because she is running for county mayor. She could say, I'm going to focus on that and step down from, I'm not going to put my name up for.
Yeah, and she has served 2 years as board chair, which there's no rule about it, but there's a little bit of a convention that, a lot of times people will be elected to a second year as long as their colleagues are more or less happy with their first year. But then there's often a sort of sense that, well, that's a good time to kind of let somebody else step up too.
Right. Kind of like the 2-term tradition for the United States president before Franklin Roosevelt.
Right.
It wasn't, you could run for more than 1 or 2 terms, but it was not done until Roosevelt. And then we passed a constitutional amendment. Anyway, she could, although she could also want to continue going because that does keep her profile up a little bit higher moving forward. But that'll be interesting to see, how that plays out, or who the next chair of the school board will be.
And so the one thing there is that the vice chair has been Steve Triplett, who is, there's a 5-4 Republican majority on the school board, but Triplett is one of the most conservative, especially culturally conservative members of the school board. And, again, there would kind of be a convention that somebody who's served as vice chair for a couple of years would often be given a shot to move up to the chair position if he wants it.
They've paid their dues.
Right. But Triplett in particular, I think, would generate more fervent opposition from the Democrats on the board than maybe one of the other Republicans would. Now, the Democrats are a minority. They can oppose him all they want. As long as the 5 Republicans want to vote to put him in, he certainly could get elected chair. But I think there would be some dissatisfaction with that for sure.
Oh yeah, and they're going to do, like I said, they're going to do that on Monday. They'll also talk about agenda items they're going to be voting on Thursday at the voting meeting. They have the opportunity to talk about it. Doesn't mean they necessarily will. Didn't look to be a whole lot on Thursday's agenda that would be earth-shattering. There's some policy changes they're looking at. There are a whole slew of approvals of paying for the rights to songs and plays that schools are putting on this year. We'll be at both meetings this week, both the Monday sessions and the Thursday sessions. And so we'll report on what they do end up deciding. Also on the calendar for Thursday at 1:30 p.m. is the Knox County Planning Commission. That's where all of the zonings and rezonings and land use questions get answered. There is one kind of interesting project that we've been following a little bit. It's supposed to come up. It's been delayed a couple of times. Lee Birch is a downtown developer, wants to put in a development on Vine Avenue, basically across from Sacred Heart Catholic Church on the hill there. The way that downtown zoning goes, he is on the grid, in the grid zone, which requires that you put ground floor commercial or office space, something public facing on the ground floor. He wants to switch to what's called downtown boulevard zoning, which you don't have that requirement, and that's typically reserved for places like Henley Street or Neyland Drive, or there is a section of Summit Hill Drive, which is very close by to this, that is zoned that way. He wants this development zone that way, so he doesn't have to do ground floor residential. Or ground floor commercial. One of the things is this stretch of it's kind of a steep stretch of Vine just to the west of Gay Street. There aren't really any other there is no commercial area up there.
Right. I'm sure his argument would be, look, this, like, it's up a hill. Yes. Yeah. I mean, the whole 100 block of Gay Street down there is all commercial, and you do have foot traffic down there, but people are not going to climb up that hill just to come to one coffee shop or whatever else you might put there. Yeah.
That's, I'm sure that's going to be his argument there. And as with, most, and I think if I recall correctly, the planning staff has recommended denying his request. But then again, they're a technical group, and they look at that and say, well, technically it needs to be that way. But these things always wind up getting voted on by elected officials like city council. Eventually, this would get to city council if it passes planning commission, and who knows what or if it gets appealed from planning commission. So and you never know what elected officials are going to do as opposed to a more technical body. But anyway, there'll be that. They've got plenty of stuff on their agenda, as we've mentioned many times. There's a lot of development, especially in the county, of converting farmland to residential areas, and there's several zonings that fall into that category that we'll take a look at Thursday when they meet. That's at this point what we know we'll be covering this week. This in the nature of the news business. There'll probably be other things. We'll be on top of that as well. Jesse, thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here.
And we will be back next week for another installment of Compass Point. Thanks.
CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.